Okay, this has been a long time coming, and since there's only a month before the remake comes, I thought I'd finally knock this one out. So, Ronin Warriors might be the most dramatic show about 5 teenagers putting on armor since Power Rangers told us they wanted teenagers with attitude. Except this time, the attitude comes with and a demon, emotional trauma, no, that still sounds like Power Ranger Samurai. No mechs. Okay, there we go. That's the difference. To be clear, there are no mechs in Ronin Warriors, we just have teenagers with attitude, multicolored armor, and the power of friendship. But guys, I promise you, this is not just anime Power Rangers. In its own way, this is something just a bit more. Less about the flashy explosions, the cool power-ups, and the toy sales. This series had a bit more depth to it than your average Americanized Sentai series. When Ronin Warriors dropped in 1988, off-rip you kinda knew this series was special. And not because the story was groundbreaking or the animation was jaw-dropping, it's because the themes were, for the most part, kinda timeless. Because at its core, you have teenagers fighting for something bigger than themselves, putting themselves in harm's way to protect strangers, which is just a good message overall. Not to mention, when you find out it's your job to fight a demon lord who just woke up and decided Tokyo looks quite conquerable today, it kinda sucks, but sometimes you gotta, because when Toppo wakes up after a 1,000-year timeout in the Netherrealm and decides he wants to ruin everybody else's day by A, take some time to improve himself by reflecting on what he did to get sealed up all those years ago, B, get a job at the local combini, C, do the exact thing that got you sealed up 1,000 years ago except that you're fighting with their descendants because you know what, I didn't hear no bell, or D, get into Bitcoin and make sure everybody knows that you got into Bitcoin and that they should invest in the next coin you talk about because you clearly know the most things about everything. I have someone I know that recently got into Bitcoin and he's been kind of annoying. Like, I get it. You're into coins. Shut up. Shut up. I don't care. If you see this video, I don't care. Shut up. Well, okay. If you selected C, you'd be correct. Bro, shut up about your stupid coins. Okay, from the top. Okay, if you selected C, you'd be correct. After being freed from his seal, he immediately builds a demonic empire called the Dynasty, and then calls upon his 4 Dark Warlords. Each one rocking some really solid armor, if I'm gonna be honest with you, they kinda hard. And those are the opposition. And meanwhile, on the Please Don't Destroy the Earth side, we have the Ronin Warriors. 5 heroes, 5 armors, 5 virtues. Ryo brings the fire with his abilities. Sage is literally wisdom with a sword. Side is calm enough to make herbal tea in the middle of a war zone. Kinto would punch a mountain with a smaller mountain. And Rowan is that one smart friend that pretends he's not smart, but we all know he's low-key incredibly smart. Together, these 5 make the team. They make the Ronin Warriors. And together, they're not just fighting against Talpa, they're fighting against the worst possible versions of themselves. Ronin Warriors blends mythology, history, and supernatural chaos into an anime that seemingly is only for kids, but if you take a step back and look at the core elements and the virtues found in the show, that's something you can apply to everyday life, which is honestly pretty cool. And I'm sure some bigwig at Toonami thought the same thing when he saw it, because eventually when this was brought to the West and aired on Toonami, it became a cult classic over time, if I'm being completely honest with you. Because you can say a lot of things about Ronin Warrior, good or bad, but you gotta say these. It's vibrant, it was emotional, and its transformation sequences low-key kinda hit. And it hit so hard, coming in 2026, we're getting an official sequel called Yorushin Den Samurai Trooper, with a new cast, a new city, new chaos, and a new coat of digital paint. But to understand why this sequel matters, we gotta start at the very beginning. So, hey, I'm Remy, and I just wanna know, if anyone's checked on the Ronin Warriors, and if not, let's. But like legit though, bro, stop telling me about your coin. I'm so serious. I hope you see this video, cause I don't care. I don't care. Let's get into this. To really understand where Ronin Warriors came from, you gotta know one thing first. The anime came before the manga. Yeah, that's right. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill, the manga got very popular, so an anime adaptation was inevitable. This was Sunrise waking up one morning in 1988 and saying, you know what? Armor. Give us armor. This whole thing was an original TV production by Studio Sunrise, the same studio that made Gundam, Cowboy Bebop, and basically half of Adult Swim in the early 2000s. So when Sunrise said they wanted a show about mystical samurai armor, no one questioned it because they kind of just print money at that studio. Have you seen Gundam? They are literally money-making machines. It's kind of crazy. And so, Ronin Warriors aired from April 30th, 1988 all the way to March 4th, 1989. Peak era for guys in elemental armors yelling about attacks with conviction. And I can't just only bring up Power Rangers in this video, at some point I have to talk about Saint Seiya. Because if you don't know what Saint Seiya is, there's a video on that in the works, don't worry about it. But before then, during the late 80s, This is the perfect time to have an anime or a series in general about teenagers punching things with magical powers. There was no better time to put out a series like this. And with its heavy samurai influence and emotional undertones, this made the show hit a bit different. Because like I said, the manga did come afterwards, but this was an anime first creation. It was built for TV, built to stand out, built to prove that mystical armor stories could still evolve past Saint Seiya and Power Rangers. And now that I talked about where the show had come from, let's talk about the people behind it. And focus on me saying people and not person. Now, technically, the series credits its creator as Hajime Yatate, and on paper sounds like a very dedicated guy working overtime for the love of the game. But here's a plot twist: Hajime isn't a guy at all, it's a pen name. It's a collective of samurai staff, sometimes referring to writers, producers, or even animators. Basically, it's the anime equivalent of saying, we made this, but we're giving it the aura of one mysterious guy in sunglasses so it just seems cooler on paper, who also never sleeps. But me joking aside, this is actually a somewhat common practice when it comes to anime. For example, the anime Shinzo wasn't actually made by a person, but a collective under a pen name also. But we do have some individuals when it comes to the actual character designs of Ronin warriors. We have Norio Shiroyama and Akiro Katayama. These men looked at traditional samurai armor, nodded respectfully at centuries worth of history, and said, you know, this is cool, but low-key, how much harder would this be if it glowed and had elemental powers? And high-key, they was right, because it got hard, bro. These designs are sick. Every suit was layered with symbolism, elements, emotions, and virtues, all with unique designs and weapons, overall leaving every armor feeling like its own individual piece rather than the collective whole it was supposed to represent. And speaking of those themes, we gotta talk about that, right? On the surface, Ronin Warriors looks like 5 guys in glowing armor punching demons, which it is, don't get me wrong, but if you look a little bit deeper, you'll find some depth in this series. One of the cooler elements of the show is the virtues that power the entire series. Righteousness, wisdom, trust, justice, and benevolence is basically Bushido in action. These morals are literally their superpowers. And don't get me wrong, clearly there's some Saturday morning jank in there, because clearly friendship amplifies their strength, and you know they gotta drive home those Saturday morning cartoon lessons of everybody's strong as an individual, but together we're unstoppable. Not to mention, we're teenagers with attitudes. So they were just checking out every Saturday morning cartoon box. It was peak 80s television. Now on the other hand, you have Talpa, who is pure evil. And what's an evil guy without evil henchmen? And that's where the 4 generals come in. They were once good men who got corrupted. So in a way, this show is exploring redemption and moral complexity. Choices matters. Virtue isn't just a power, it's a responsibility. And not to mention, but to totally mention, the historical stuff is low-key kinda wild. Ronin means masterless samurai, but in this series, it's reimagined as an independent hero. The boys are hinted at to be descendants of Sengoku-era legends, and the boys are carrying that legacy and responsibility. And meanwhile, during all this chaos of fighting good versus evil, the show hints at Shinto mythology, including the 3 sacred treasures. Every artifact, every virtue, every transformation has layers of history and symbolism built in. But enough with all this setup, what's the overall plot of the series, right? So without mincing words, Ronin Warriors is a classic good versus evil setup. However, it carries itself with the confidence of an 80s anime that knows its armor designs go too hard for the era. So without further ado, Tokyo gets invaded out of nowhere. Talpa shows up like, hey, remember me from like 100-something years ago? Yeah, I'm back and I want literally all of this. So he brings up his dynasty army and his 4 dark warlords wearing his evil armor. And then the apocalypse starts on a weekday. Which, you know what? You know, people say they hate Mondays. It turns out you could hate any day of the week if an evil demon shows up to take over the world. Meanwhile, 5 teenagers show up. Ryo, Sage, Side, Kento, and Rowan suddenly become humanity's only hope. They're the descendants of legendary samurai that once sealed Topple back in the day. Now it's up to them and their new magical elemental armor powered by virtue to seal the demons once again. But if I'm being so for real, imagine waking up one day, someone told you you're a descendant of a legendary samurai and saying, hey, you gotta stop these demons with the power of virtue. Yes, virtue. Imagine trying to save the world where your armor judges your moral character. It's kind of like if Green Lanterns and the Samurais had a crossover. It's rough out there, dog. But our group of heroes are now guided by the Ancient One and his tiger. And with our sides now defined, it's up to these people to determine the fate of the world. Good versus evil, a tale as old as time. But our story unfolds in arcs. The first arc consists of this. Each Ronin warrior wakes up their mystical armor and then goes to Tokyo. Therefore, the early episodes are basically 5 separate origin stories crashing into one. And that's fine, you get a taste for the show and the hijinks, but the real story starts when they enter the Nether Realm. Not the studio, but the place. The boys enter Talpa's home turf. to fight the warlords and to retrieve the Jewel of Life. And this is the part of the series that, for me at least, kind of got dark and a little bit metal, but like in a cool way. But it's during this part where they unlock the Infernal Armor, a power-up so strong our main character is the only one of the Ronins who can survive wearing it, making his stress level become the team stress level. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm pretty sure it's not a hot take, is probably my favorite armor in the series. Like, it's just, it's cold, bro. This is a cold power-up. I just like the design of this thing. It's so sick, but, you know, back on topic. But after trials and tribulations, eventually they get to the final showdown with Talpa. The Ronins unite with their virtues, master their armors, and hit him with the only attack powerful enough to delete a demon lord from existence. And good finally triumphs. Tokyo stops having evil aura around it, and the boys finally return home. Definitely traumatized, but you know what? Spiritually though, they probably have never felt better in their lives. And this series ends with balance restored, proving that virtue and teamwork are superpowers if you have mystical armor. But if you don't, they still are. But having ancient mystical armor definitely does help. And for the most part, that's the story. But here's the thing. Like I said earlier, the anime technically isn't the full story. There's also the manga adaptation. And in a weird way, it gets kind of interesting. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, the anime was the original series, but we do have the manga adaptation, which, like I keep saying, is kind of interesting. So it was illustrated by Ryuichi Hoshino, who's honestly kind of interesting because the thing he's most well known for is the Finding Nemo manga. Yes, there is a Finding Nemo manga. Why does this exist? I don't know. I'm not the person to ask, but it is pretty funny that it does. Why do we need this? Anyway, the series was published by Kodansha and it ran in Comic Boom Boom from 1988 to 1990. And that's all cool or whatever, but when it comes to the manga, here's the interesting thing. It's not a one-for-one, it's a remix, it's the alternate cut. Because you have to ask yourself this when it comes to this manga series. What if the anime only had 2 volumes to work with? Yes, they had to put 39 episodes into 2 manga volumes. I can't comprehend trying to condense 39 episodes into 2 volumes. That is insanity. The amount of content they had to cut to make this work is insane. Because if you blink, you're halfway through the series practically. Look, I'm new to this fandom, don't get me wrong, and I can't say this is well received by the fandom because I don't really have anyone to ask. I can only go through Reddit and other online related forums. But what I can say is this, when I told you blink and you're halfway through the series, I'm not kidding you. From what I can see, this manga moves fast, like really fast. It's really ridiculous. And I get it, once again, you're compiling 39 episodes into 2 volumes, but man, I wish they just didn't do that. Because this story is genuinely pretty fun, and the manga adaptation, for what I've seen, is not the best. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the art style. And hey, don't get me wrong, if you like it, I love it type shit, but like, it's just really not for me. But overall, from what I can gather, the core of the manga is still the same. You got the 5 Ronins, evil demon lords, glowing armor, and you save the world by the end of volume 2. So you get the same experience, just way less of it. But I do have to note this, from what I can tell and pick up through research, some characters do have different vibes to them. And by different vibes, I mean different character portrayals. And maybe that's because there's technically one writer behind this series, but overall, it is just different. You have Lord Saberstrike, who's way more pathetic and cowardly in the manga compared to the anime where he's tragic. In the manga, apparently, he's just a guy having a really bad day. And by a bad day, I don't mean the Batman kind of bad day where you become the Joker. I mean like you stepped on a Lego and you know what, I'm deciding to be evil now kind of bad day. It's really weird how they write characters apparently in this manga. And if you couldn't pick up from how I've been describing this manga this entire time, there isn't technically an English translation of this. Well, luckily I did find one. It genuinely felt AI translated, so I don't want to recommend it to anybody. And not to mention, honestly, the translation was rough. I mean, it was awkward. There was like punctuation issues, awkward sentence structures. They were even getting characters' genders wrong, and it was just a whole bunch of hot mess. So once again, hire people, guys. You don't have to always cheap out and use the AI. I get it's convenient, but I'm sure real fans of the series would appreciate someone taking the time out and the care to translate this and try to make the experience bearable compared to the machine translated slop I saw. I didn't even finish it. It was 2 volumes and I just couldn't get past a certain number. It was just rough. So this is the first time on the channel I'm gonna say this. Please do not read the manga, or don't even try to find it. Just watch the anime. I never thought I'd say that, but just watch the anime, save some time, enjoy yourself with some fun 80s anime, and have a good time. The manga is not worth it. But you know what is worth it that companies love? all this extra media. Toys, VHSs, DVDs, they love making extra stuff to go with the main dish. So when it comes to all these extra medias, we gotta think about the toys. Bandai said armor, removable, shiny, oh, sign us all the way up. When these toys came out and became instant childhood classics, they knew this was something to put money behind. Well, at least in Japan. When it came to the US, Playmates was the one behind the distribution over here. At the time, they were best known for all the TMNT toys, and for the most part, they were cool toys overall. Interchangeable armor, katanas, multicolored, kids love these things. But at the same time, the competition on the market was aggressive, dog. They were going against TMNT, other multicolored teenagers with attitude, aka the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, and even Buzz Lightyear. It was a rough time to be a samurai trooper. I don't know why I said it like that. It was a rough time to be a Ronin Warrior fan. And that led to toy sales in America at least being sort of lackluster. But what wasn't lackluster was the OVAs, which went surprisingly hard. You have Gaiden, Legend of the Infernal Armor, and The Message. Each one a little bit darker, moodier, and somehow even more dramatic than the original series. They also even had a video game, turning this franchise into a multimedia juggernaut at the time. And since I finally brought up the West, we gotta talk about Toonami and their adaptation of it. So, in 1995, the show dropped in the US as Ronin Warriors, and most people ignored it, go figure. And surprisingly, the series disappeared into the void, but then Toonami picked it up. And somehow, Toonami resurrected this show like it was summoning something from the graveyard like it was Yu-Gi-Oh! Suddenly, everyone knew about these armored boys with attitude. People were quoting the attacks they really couldn't pronounce, action figures were actually gaining some traction in the US, and for a brief moment of time, the US treated this series like the cooler, older, animated cousin of Power Rangers. And since we're talking about the Western experience, we gotta talk about the dub, because surprisingly, it wasn't a disaster. When it comes to most 90s and early 2000s dubs, they all kind of seem like they have this vibe of, nah, let's rewrite this into comedy hour for some reason. But when it came to Ronin Warriors, they actually respected the source material. For the most part, the story stayed mostly intact. But like I said, they still made some changes. It was only for the most part. Names were changed, dialogue was softened, and of course they added some jokes. But what they didn't really do was a lot of censorship, surprisingly enough. Especially if you compare it to shows like Cardcaptor Sakura, which, because if you would talk to anyone who's actually like a diehard fan of that series, they tell you about the abomination that was the original dub that we got. They speak of that show like it's the Antichrist. They hate that show. Oh, man. Oh, man. But with that, for the most part, we're done with our look backwards. So let's look forward. The year is 2026, which is just a month from now, but the franchise isn't just coming back, it's mutating. No, it's evolving. Rolling into 2026 with a brand new sequel that actually dares to move the story forward, officially with the new name, Yoro Shinden Samurai Troopers. With this new series, we have new tradition, new characters, and new armor. But technically it's not, because Sunrise basically said, we're keeping the lore and some of the armor, but everything else completely gone. Every character you like is probably going to be a cameo. We got a whole new cast. And this time the action drops into modern day Japan. This time we have skyscrapers, more crowds, neon lights, and probably somebody with an iPhone. And while we don't know the entire story yet, so far from what we can tell, the premise is pretty much the same. The Demon Realm seal pops like a Tupperware lid, and the city suddenly dealing with an invasion before they can finish their food. And then enters in our next generation of samurai troopers. 5 new young men, 5 new suits of armor, 5 new ways to get emotionally attached before Sunrise inevitably breaks your heart, because this is not a remake. This is a fully original story, just a continuation that pretends the 80s ended yesterday. And not only that, Sunrise is taking this new series super seriously. They have Yuichi Fujita as the director, and he's done some pretty indie animes. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one called Gintama. He's done that. It's a super underground anime. Nobody's ever heard of it. They're coming with some real fire behind this new series. So when I tell you to get ready, because in a month, this series starts. So get ready and be hyped. Because this revival feels less like a reboot and more like a baton pass, with fire coming right off of it. And with that, we have now seen the full journey, the past, the present, and even the future. And now there's only one thing left to cover: why this franchise still matters. The wild thing about Samurai Trooper is how it keeps surviving these shifts in culture, taste, and time. In all honesty, it kind of feels like it shouldn't work. It's an 80s anime about teenagers with attitudes wearing mythical powered armors to punch an ancient demon warlord in the face, but somehow, in its own way, it's kind of timeless. Because underneath all that armor, fire effects, and end-of-the-world speeches is something undeniably human. The idea that courage can be inherited, that responsibility can skip a generation and then come back swinging. That when the world cracks open and something monstrous walks out, the next generation has to decide whether they're ready to stand up and fight. And that's what makes this 2026 revival feel so right. This isn't complete nostalgia bait. This is passing a torch. Or honestly, it's more like passing an armory. The old battles still echo, old sacrifices still matter, but now we get to watch a new group step into that armor that wasn't built for them, but they'll be damned if they don't grow into it. Because this ties everything together. The mystical themes, the historical influences, the generational weight, the goofy teen hero save the world energy, the surprisingly deep emotional undercurrents into this one long chain of legacy, connecting the older generation to the next. And what's written on that chain is one question. What does it mean to stand your ground when the world expects you to fail? And this series answers that. And maybe that's why this series also keeps coming back, because every era needs its own troopers. Every era needs someone young, unprepared, messy, and scared, but still willing to stand up and put the armor on anyway. The old series taught us that Destiny doesn't pick perfect people, it picks the ones who showed up. But this new series asks us to believe that someone else will show up after we're gone. And to me, that's what I think the legacy of the armor is. It's not the power, it's not the weapon, but it's the courage to keep answering the call no matter who wears it next. And honestly, for a show about teenagers with attitude and mystical armor that isn't Power Rangers, that's pretty cool. So, hey, in case you forgot, I'm Remy. Thanks for letting me talk about the Ronin Warriors. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that other fun stuff, and I will see y'all in the next one. Y'all be easy. Later. Bye! Okay, so I finally got to this. I've been meaning to do this for a minute. I'm not going to hold you. Somebody put this in the community section a while ago, and I was like, yeah, dude, the new anime is coming out. I'll definitely cover this. And I just kept pushing it back. But over Thanksgiving break, I was sick. So I was super sick. And I just ended up watching this because, I was like, you know what? No better time than the present, and I'm a captured audience because I was not leaving my bed. Literally, I actually skipped Thanksgiving. I was sick at home. It kind of sucked, but it is what it is. We're better now. So yeah, this is why this video is coming out now. It should have been earlier, but you know what? No time like the present. But yeah, I generally don't think this is a bad series. Honestly, it's pretty cool, and I'm kind of hyped for the new series. So I'm looking forward to that next month, which is, once again, so crazy to say next month is 2026. But it is what it is. You feel me? We keep it pushing. So yeah. Also, once again, the dude that keeps telling me about the Bitcoins and his new coin, shut up again. I'm going to say it for the last time in this video, but please do not talk to me about coins anymore. I think I hate you. I don't hate you, but man, I'm getting there. Anyway, that'll be it for me, y'all. Y'all take it easy. See y'all in the next one. We are doing a lot of videos this month, so get ready for that. I'm sacrificing a lot of sleep for this. I'm alting all month, so get ready for some good content. Also, maybe Digimon might be coming soon. I don't know. Depends if I can get this thumbnail made. But yeah, Digimon, other content. We out here, bro. We getting it out the mud this month. So get ready for that. Y'all be easy. Later. Bye.